Jaya Radha Madhava Vrindavan Jaya Radha Madhava Vrindavan Gopi Jaya Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jaya Vallabha Girivaradhari Kisoranandana Braja Janaranjana Kisoranandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Bharatari Shamaratari Jaya Radha Madhava Vrindavan Jaya Radha Madhava Vrindavan Gopi Jaya Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Kisoranandana Braja Janaranjana Kisoranandana Braja Janaranjana Shivanatira Varachari Shivanatira Varachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Goranitai, 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 Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram. Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Radhe Sham, Radhe Sham, Radhe Sham, Jaya Radhe Sham, Jaya Radhe Sham, Jaya Radhe Sham. Radhe Sham, Jaya Radhe Sham, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnu Paramahamsa Parabhakacharya Sutara Satashi Shriman, His Divine Loving Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnu Paramahansa Parabhakacharya Satashi Shiman, His Divine Loving Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki, Ananta Koi Vaishnavinda Ki, Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki, Brahmashikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Gadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sammakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki, Vrindavan Dham Ki, Mayapur Dham Ki, Navadvip Dham Ki, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki, Shrimati Tulsi Devi Ki, Shrimati Bhakti Devi Ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinda Ki. All glories to the Some devotees. All glories to the Some devotees. All glories to the Some devotees. All glories to Shri Guru, Shri Guranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Vardhavani Pacharini Nirvishesha Simhari Om Ganatimarandasya Jana Jana Salakaya Chaksun Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadanti Swapadantikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopisa Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namosate Om Mahavadhanaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gora Tushe Namaha Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you for letting me speak this evening on the Bhagavad Gita. I pray that that our discussions are enlivening to all of us. We're on chapter 15, the Yoga of the Supreme Person, and we are at verse 17. Uttamaḥ puruṣas paramātmety udāhṛtaḥ yo loka-trayam āviśya bibharty avyaya īśvaraḥ uttamaḥ puruṣas anyaḥ paramātmety udāhṛtaḥ yo loka-trayam āviśya bibharty avyaya īśvaraḥ uttamaḥ puruṣas paramātmety udāhṛtaḥ yo loka-trayam āviśya bibharty avyaya īśvaraḥ. Uttama, the best. Purusha, personality. Two, but. Anyaḥ, another. Parama, the supreme. Atma, self. Iti, thus. Udāhṛtaḥ is said. Yaha, who? Loka, of the universe. Trayam, the three divisions. Avyaya, entering. Bibharty is maintaining. Avyaya, inexhaustible. īśvaraḥ, the Lord. The translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. The idea of this verse is nicely expressed in the Katha Upanishad and the Śvetāvarta Upanishad, it is clearly stated that above the innumerable living entities, some of whom are conditioned and some of whom are liberated, there is the Supreme Personality who is Paramātmety. The Upanishadic verse runs as follows. Nicho nichanam shaitanas shaitanam. The purport is that amongst all the living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there is one supreme living personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment according to different work. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart as Paramātmety. A wise man who can understand him is eligible to attain perfect peace, not others. Jai. So as we were speaking in the previous verse, the last couple of nights, about the fallible and the infallible living entities. And so in this verse, they're referred to as the conditioned and the liberated. In the spiritual sky, that sweet blue boy, Nanda, Yasodamai, Govinda, he is making all arrangements for the liberated souls. But for those souls who have some envy in their hearts, unfortunately, they can't stay in the spiritual sky. But this sweet cowherd boy is still so loving. He makes all arrangements because they want to enjoy separately. So he makes an arrangement of the Mahataka. First, he expands himself into the universal form. And then he creates the 16 principles of material action. And then from there, he expands himself into Mahavishnu. And from Mahavishnu's pores come these universes, these globes, unlimited numbers. And then from there, he enters as Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, and he fills half this universe with water. And he lays down on Anantashesh. And from his lotus-like navel sprouts a lotus flower. And that is the birthplace of the engineer and the creator of this universe, Lord Brahma. And so from there, he glances and impregnates this universe with all the living entities who want to enjoy separately from him, giving them all facility. Within the stem of the lotus flower, there are 14 divisions of planetary systems. There's the upper, including Satyaloka, which is the planet of Lord Brahma. There's the middle planetary systems, which is also including Marchaloka, our planet. And then there's the lower planetary systems that house the demons and other lower living entities. So he expands himself even further. And he then goes into the heart of every living entity as Paramātmety. And he also goes into every atom. When he creates this Mahatma, this material segment of the whole creation, is only about a quarter of the creation. And when he comes in here, there's nothing here for him to enjoy, nothing that he's interested in enjoying. But the living entity is immediately influenced by this energy. It's his external energy, because they didn't want to associate with the internal energy. So they're now associating with the external energy, and they're becoming affected, so to speak. And in that doing so, they become very forgetful. But they're able to live out their desires. And he's right there with them, whether they want to take a pig body or a demigod body. He's there to encourage them in whatever direction they want to go. They're similar, the Atma and the Paramatma, in that they're both eternal. They're similar in that they have some desire to control, though the Paramatma's control is vast. He is controlling, maintaining, destroying, and creating everything. He knows every single body, whereas we only know our own body, and even that is very, very limited. And even the little bit of control we have over our body is so limited. And how much do we all really understand about the systems, the respiratory system or the brain function, all this really? Even doctors who study it for decades, they can't understand completely either. But Paramatma, he not only knows our body, he knows all the bodies. He knows everything. And so anyone, it says in the Savataka Tantra that anyone who knows these three Vishnus is eligible and can be liberated from this material entanglement. So the Paramatma and the living entity are similar in that they are both Satchidananda Vigraha. And as we've discussed many times before, the Atma is very small, and it's significant in the words that are used in this verse as far as uttamaḥ, describing Paramatma is the best, puruṣa, personality, and Paramatma, the supreme, Parama, and īśvaraḥ, the Lord, or in other times it's been meaning controller. So both are pleasure seeking, both are controllers, but the living entity is to much lesser degree. So he's described as two birds sitting in a tree in the scriptures. And that, like two birds sitting in the tree, one is trying to enjoy the fruits of the tree and going from tree to tree to tree. And the other one is a well-wishing friend who is directing the bird according to its work and its desires. The pleasure-seeking living entity is eternal, but because of his influence, being influenced by the material energy, he becomes confused. And even though he's eternal, he's getting frustrated from trying to control and enjoy that which is temporary, which is the material energy, which is all temporary. And so sometimes they turn to philosophy to try and comprehend or understand these things. And the current day, there's this philosophy, well, just go for it and just enjoy whatever you can as much as you can, because life is short and this is all there is, which is a pretty animalistic type of philosophy. And then there's the Jains or the Buddhists or the impersonalists who say, oh, it's all fake. There's nothing here. It's just an illusion. So we just have to become one and rise above all this energy. But then there's some, and we're in association with those some who ask a little deeper questions. I can remember when I was a young girl and I started asking, who am I? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? What's this all about? Why is some people suffer so much seemingly for no reason? Others seem to enjoy seemingly for no reason. So confusing. So I went to my father, who taught theology in a university. He's my father. He should know everything. So I went to him and asked him. And he pats me on the back and he says, oh, my dear, we just have to learn to live with these questions. And that was not a good answer for me. Actually, I cried very hard at that answer because it was not something I knew I could live with. And so I started looking. And the last book I read before I met the devotees in Srila Prabhupada was Ramakrishna's book. And even though it was such beautiful poetry, the way it was written and composed, but it was like eating cotton candy. Has anyone yet, what cotton candy is here? It's this really, it looks really pretty. It looks like a cloud, and it's on a cone. But if you take one bite, it just melts in your mouth into sugar. And so you get a stomachache very quickly. It's just a very sugary sweet that has no substance. And similarly, Ramakrishna's writings there's no way to really apply them to your life. Whereas in Srila Prabhupada's books, immediately he gives instructions that meaningful and clear on how to apply and make it beneficial. Maybe at the end of the class, someone else would like to share about when these questions hit their consciousness and what their reactions were. But when I met the devotees and they offered me to come meet their spiritual master, and they said you could ask him questions, and I said, oh, good, I have 5. So we went that evening. They drove up to LA, and I sat, and I was immediately intimidated. I like chanting Hare Krishna. I love prasadam, but the devotees scared me. They were so extreme, it seemed to me. And so I was immediately intimidated, because in Laguna Beach, we only had 5 brahmacharis, very gentle-hearted young boys. And in LA, it was like 40 very enthusiastic, very intense devotees. So I was immediately intimidated and didn't know how I was going to ask Prabhupada questions after the lecture. So I was like, oh, this is my chance. How am I going to do this? And Srila Prabhupada, when he started lecturing, he answered each of my questions in the order in which I had arranged it in my mind. That's paramātmety. That's Chaitya Guru. And it was really an incredible experience for me to finally, after reading so many books and looking in so many different traditions, to find something with substance, something with real meaning. It's like your heart just explodes with light. It's a wonderful experience. And then when Paramatma sees that the living energy has some interest, finally, after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, going through all these different bodies, he gives them all facility. So when the living energy begins to understand who this Paramatma is, who this Supreme Lord is, they begin to understand how small and how insignificant they are. And as they do this, they're able to surrender more and more to the instructions of the spiritual master and take up the process of bhakti yoga. And he begins to understand what is real and what is not real. What is real pleasure? What is not real pleasure? What really can be enjoyed and what really can't be enjoyed? What control and who is the controller there is to be had? So he can discriminate between the matter and the spiritual, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and other living entities. And the living entity understands his eternal position. Nicho Nichanam Chaitanas Chaitanam. And in the material world, even in the material world, he can become liberated. And as he understands that Krishna is the supreme and we are the eternal servitor, and he starts to offer service to the Lord. And this in the material world is not considered a very elevated position to be a servant. Even if you're paid a great amount of money, it's still a lowly position to be a servant. Everybody wants to be the master. It doesn't imply happiness to be a servant. And even if you get a lot of money, but if you go to Krishna looking for money, you'll never find Krishna. You'll never see Krishna. He won't appear to us if we are looking for anything material. So as he does this and he offers service, sincere, loving service, the Lord begins to show affection to the living entity. And this relationship is revealed. This is called bhakti. So the living entity changes his position. He changes from being the infallible, from being the fallible to the infallible. He changes from being the conditioned to the liberated, and he becomes eligible to go back to Godhead, where he can join all the other infallible living entities. The biggest journey that we can take in this material world is from our mind to our heart. That's the greatest journey. It's the furthest journey, but we've got to take it. We've got this mind which is been focused for lifetime after lifetime and satisfying the senses of all these temporary material bodies, is turning and focusing on satisfying the Supreme Lord. And Srila Prabhupada has made it so simple. And Lord Chaitanya offering us this process. It's the greatest, most simple process of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We don't have to think, we just have to hear and repeat as purely as possible. And it just takes our sincere effort. There's two really great examples of this journey that I thought of, and one is Bilamangal Thakur. He was actually a Brahmana, but he was a fallen Brahmin, is that he had a prostitute girlfriend he was very attached to. And his father died, and he had to go perform the Shraddha ceremony. And he told her, he says, I'm coming back tonight, leave the lights on, leave the door open. And so after the Shraddha funeral ceremony for his father, he went to return home. And at that time, this huge hurricane or tsunami, or whatever you want to call it, this huge deluge downpour came. Just winds and rain and lightning and thunder. And when he got to the river that he had to cross to get to her house, all the boatmen had taken their boats and gone and took shelter somewhere because the river, from all the water pouring into it, was rushing. The waves were crashing. It was very dangerous. But he thought, oh, well, I can swim. And he jumped in the water to try to swim to the other side. And the current is pulling him so quickly, the rain is washing down on him, that when he tries to breathe, he gets a lot of water. And he sees a log floating, so he thinks, I'll get some air this way. And he grabs onto this log to pull himself up and discovers it's a dead body. He lets that go. And he goes on. And somehow or another, he gets to the other side, but he can't get out. The water's pulling him so quickly, way downstream. And every time he tries to get out, he just gets handfuls of mud. So then he sees some roots growing out of the ground. And he thinks, oh, if I could grab onto one of those, I'll get out. So he grabs onto one of those and discovers it's a snake. Somehow or another, he got out of that river that night. And he had to walk a long way through this terrible storm back to her house, which was all dark and locked up. And he's pounding, open up, open up. I'm suffering so much, just open up. And she goes and she opens it up. And Chaitya Guru in her heart told her what to say. And she said, wow, look at you. If you just had a little bit of this determination, to be a devotee of Krishna, you would be a pure devotee. And Krishna in his heart let him understand that. And when he understood that, he understood it and he left. And he went off to Vrindavan. And he was there, but then one day his eyes fell on a beautiful woman. And he couldn't even take his eyes off of her. He ended up following her to his house, her house. And her husband said, "Can I help you, sir?" And he said, "Can I just have a moment with your wife?" And the man recognized that Vrindavan Bengal, the Kaur was a Brahmana and a saintly person. So he said yes. So he went in, he asked her for this stick pin. Women sometimes hold their hair up with it. He said, "May I have that?" And she took it out and she gave it to him. And immediately he poked out his two eyes because they were the source of his entanglement in this material world. Though we are not, and I'm definitely not encouraging poking out your eyes. But I am encouraging that we all have our weaknesses and we should be aware of what those weaknesses are. And we should adjust our lives, adjust our sadhana so that we are not affected by them. One big, huge device that causes us so much grief. And we should, be sure to turn it off while we're chanting. Turn it off while we're reading. Turn it off while we're trying to do our service, because it will distract us. It's like Maya calling us, "Oh, come over here and see if somebody wrote you a letter." The other story, which is a really wonderful example of Paramatma in the heart, is that of Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva Maharaj was the oldest son of a very wonderful king who was the son of Lord Brahma. And so he was entitled to inherit this vast kingdom. But unfortunately for him, his father had two wives. Dhruva was from the first wife, but his second wife was more dear to him. And she had a son also. So one day, Dhruva, 5 years old, just a little boy, right? What do they know? He's just trying to climb onto the lap of his father who was sitting on his throne. And he sees his mother comes in and sees this happening. His stepmother, Saruchi, comes in and tells him, "Oh, no," pulls him down. "You can't sit on his lap because you weren't born from my womb. Only my son will sit on his lap." Immediately, Dhruva Maharaj, he was powerful, but he was angry. He was angry and he was hurt, and his eyes welled up in tears, and he ran to his mother, who felt very sad for her son. And he told his mother, "I want a kingdom greater than my father's. I don't care about his old kingdom. I want my own kingdom, and I want it to be greater. How can I get this?" And she is a pious woman, and she says, "Well, everything comes from Krishna." And he goes, "Okay, where's Krishna? I'm going to talk to him right now about this." She says, "Well, to see Vishnu, I hear sages go to the forest and meditate," not really expecting her 5-year-old son to take up this journey. And so he went off. And as he went off and he's stomping on his way to the forest, he runs into Narada Muni, Chaitya Guru. Krishna sent his dearmost devotee to guide Dhruva Maharaj on his journey. And so he tried to convince him, "You're just a little boy. You really are not at the age that sages are when they go to the forest to meditate on Vishnu." But he was determined, and he let Narada Muni know how determined he was. And he says, And he says, so Narada Muni gave him good instruction. He told him, okay, go to Madhavan on the bank of the Jamuna, there perform your austerity, bathe 3 times a day, and meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he described Krishna's smiling face. He described Krishna to him so he'd know what he was looking for in his heart. And he gave him the mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And in the first month, Dhruva, he only ate fruit and berries every 3rd day. In the second month, he only ate dried grass and leaves every 6th day. In the 3rd month, every 9 days, he drank a little water. And in the 4th month, he breathed once every 12th day. And in the 5th month, he went to stand on 1 leg. Well, he became very powerful. He became as heavy as Vishnu. The planet was skewed. It was tilted off its orbit. And the demigods were choking. They couldn't breathe because he had become so powerful by not breathing. The demigods were being affected. And they go running to Vishnu. Vishnu, what's going on? We can't breathe. And Lord Vishnu says, oh, don't worry. It's my devotee. I'll talk to him. So he goes to see Dhruva, who is meditating so intently, is seeing the Lord in his heart. And he's standing before Dhruva, and Dhruva has not even opened his eyes. He had closed all the holes in his body, and his eyes were not open, nothing. And so finally, Vishnu disappeared from his heart. And Dhruva was shocked. So he opens his eyes and he sees Vishnu standing before him. And he immediately falls on the ground. And like a 5-year-old boy, he starts grabbing Lord Vishnu's feet and trying to kiss them, not knowing better. And Lord Vishnu takes his conch shell and touches him on the forehead, where he becomes fully realized. And from there, he offered this beautiful prayer. My dear Lord, I have practiced austerities and penances because I was designed to receive something from you. But in exchange, you have allowed me to see you, who is never visible even to great sages and saintly persons. I have been searching out some broken pieces of glass, but instead I have found the most valuable jewel. I am therefore satisfied, and I do not wish to ask anything more from you. So this is another great lesson, as we grow on our path of devotional service, we have to weed out our anarthas. We have to weed out all these material desires that we have to enjoy or lord it over this material world. All our frustrations come from trying to control and enjoy that which is not our business to enjoy or control. And so on our path of bhakti, this is our work, is to release these anarthas so that we can actually properly hear and chant the holy name of the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada is really the most perfect example of this, as he made it his life's desire to please his spiritual master. And everything he did, in some things, may not have appeared very successful, but ultimately he had an immense amount of success due to the mercy of Krishna. But it didn't matter to him whether he was successful or not. The point was that he wanted to please and serve his spiritual master. And so that's our business, is to embrace this mentality and have this honest introspection about what am I doing? Why am I doing it? How am I doing it? And not be having some illusion of that we are somebody important, or or somebody powerful or significant, because we are really so insignificant. So I'm going to stop here and ask if anybody would like to share how they came to Krishna consciousness. Because it's so enlivening to hear this. It really is enlivening to hear how other people have come to Krishna consciousness, to see how Krishna has enticed people or tricked people, or in so many wonderful ways he helps us come back to him. So
Hare Krishna. I've allowed everyone to unmute. You can unmute and have a discussion.
Navangalata, how did you come to Krishna?
Actually, I had a Mayavadi friend who brought me to Krishna consciousness.
You see how tricky Krishna is?
Yeah, Krishna's very. She's a really hard. She's a follower of Swami Chimnayananda, and she's a real strict Mayavadi. But I was involved with a women's center, and she was teaching yoga. And she said to me one day, she said, "Let me take you to the Hindu temple." And it was the Hare Krishna temple, but she didn't tell me Hare Krishna. But the funny thing is that if she'd said Hare Krishna, I might have been a bit worried about it. Because I remember when I was at like this is only 20 years ago, but when I was at university in 1978, 79, I remember the Hare Krishnas, they were all dressed in saffron and making a big noise. And I was on the other side of the street. I never actually came to talk to them at all. So if she had said Hare Krishna, I may not have gone. But she said, "Let me take you to the Hindu temple." And I was very dissatisfied with the Western culture. And so I was looking for alternatives. So I thought, oh, this is a good idea. I was studying social work and learning about different cultures. So I thought that was good. I had no idea who was on the altar. There in Hamilton, they have Gaunitai, and they have Radha Govinda, and they have Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman, and they have Bal Gopal, all on the same altar. And there's just like so many. And I thought, okay. But anyway, so yeah, Krishna had his arrangement. Just when otherwise before that I was looking, but I was too much of a Mayavadi myself. I wasn't looking for God. I was looking for answers, but I wasn't looking for God. So he tricked me that way as well.
Yeah. A friend of mine's mother and father would come to check on their daughter quite regularly. Actually, Rose Forecast, she's 100 years old now. She's still alive. Her daughter, Leela Shakti, died. But Rose brought her parents, and they were older people. And her father walked into the temple room and he saw the altar, and he immediately paid obeisance. He said, "Yes, this is God." He's such a pious man. He could see that. That amazed me. That how pious, even though he was so much older, sometimes older people, they can't, that aren't so receptive to different things.
Yeah, I remember. I invited my mother to the temple. But she was a Christian, but she wasn't interested in the philosophy. She was just like it was a habit for her. It was a way to find company. So she wasn't going to be interested in learning any other philosophy. Her sister I could speak to on the basis of philosophy. I could talk to her, and we had good conversation, but not my mother. She had no interest at all. But anyway, it turned out that I'd arrived in Auckland, and I told her to come to the temple to pick me up on the Sunday feast day. But that day also happened to be a day of initiation. So she came from a Protestant Christian background. We don't want idols and we don't want anything else. But she got not only the idols, she got the fire sacrifice as well. So that was enough for her. But she did say Hare Krishna and she did take prasadam. So we'll hope that she has a better next life.
Now, you know the artist Driti. She's a great artist. And she was pretty young at the time. She was still in high school. And she was also attending some art school that is some famous art school where actually Jadurani and Krishna Bhavani, I think, several devotees who became devotees, they weren't devotees at the time, but they were actually in the process of becoming devotees, were going to this art school. And so they would try to encourage her. But she was like, oh, no, Hare Krishna. And if she would see Hare Krishna on one side of the street, she would cross the other to get away. Yeah. But somehow or another, by repeatedly eating prasadam and being invited, she started coming to the temple and soon enough became very attracted and really liked it. But she was still very young and, living at home and going to high school. And so sometimes when she wanted to go to the temple, she would tell her friend, if my mother calls you, tell her I'm there, but I'm, at the store, but I'm with you. So she would use it. She was with a friend rather than so her mom wouldn't know she was at the temple. And this would go on. And then one day she came to the temple. It was pretty early in the morning, and all the devotees are all excited. They're getting ready to go pick up Prabhupada at the airport. And so she jumps in one of the cars, and somehow or another they got to the airport early. And Prabhupada was just coming out. And she's right there, and the TV cameras are right there.
Okay.
They zoom right in on her face. And she's all blissful and happy and chanting. And they just hold her face in this frame. And it was all over the news. So her mom, finally she called in to check in with her mom. Mom, where have you been? Oh, I'm at Susan's house. She never quite lived that one down. Never quite. All righty. Well,
all right.
Again, anybody else want to share?
Does anyone else want to share? Say something about how they came to Krishna consciousness, what inspired them, what questions they had that brought them?
You probably all were pure devotees before you came to Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, they probably were. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai. All glories to Prabhupada.